Okay, so here is the history quiz item analysis report in Excel. I have increased the size for this video just because my recorder makes it a little bit on the blurry side. So essentially, while I went over with you some of these basic concepts, really you don't need to see a lot of this data. So most of these, while interesting, you can hide. You'll probably want to keep the difficulty level. The alpha is interesting to look at, but you don't need it when you're looking at a question by question. So now we're here. Let's hide that. I'm going to hide all of that except for the difficulty. And the question title. Question ID is nice to refer to something. Hide the alpha. And we're not going to worry about the distractors. We're just going to be looking at the point by serial of correct, the difficulty index, and then information about the question. So these are the three things that you'll be looking at. Now, of course, always go through and look at it visually. So notice how I zoomed in. So that's really going to be the first thing that you look at, is you're going to be looking at the visual parts. But what I want to show you, because the visual is intuitive and that's what the other video went over, are just some simple things that you can do. Is you can then highlight that, go to Data, Filter. This allows you to then sort by ascending or descending of the point by serial. So you can actually, if you do it ascending, then you automatically see all of these, which are probably okay. But what you can do is you can do conditional formatting, and then you can say, you can either do a gradient, but I kind of like to have a cutoff because it makes it easier. So you can say format only values that contain a cell value that is less than 0.25, and we'll just do red. So automatically highlights that. Now something that you want to do is you can do a poor point by serial. And that way you don't have to keep track. If you go through the images or you're going through the website, you would have to write this all down. The nice thing about exporting is then you can keep track. So what we can do here is if this is less than 0.25, then give it a 1, otherwise it's a 0. So this is basically the same thing as the red highlighting, but it gives you data so that you can automatically add it up. So I'm highlighting this. So I can see that I've got a total of 30 out of 95. And again, you know, really below 20 is something to be wondering about. So now we've got, what we also want to look at is not just that. because you could have, look at this, you've got almost over 99% of the students getting it correct. It's a poor point by serial because it's not a good discriminator. It's very easy. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad question. It could be either an easy question, or you taught it really well, or it's a question that you just want to assess that everyone should know. So what we're going to put here is we want the difficulty index to be at least 60%. So let's find out which ones are too hard. So if it's too hard, then that should be, it should mean that if this is less than 0.6, then it's too hard. So this says no, it's not too hard because 87% got it correct. So this is a way that we can indicate whether the question is too hard. Now another thing would be, is it too easy? Now there is no number that I've read about that says it's too easy. So really you might just want to say, okay, well, if you have a point by serial, what might be an indicator that it's too easy? So let's just say, more than 90%. But again, that's really arbitrary. You may just want to take a look and change that number up and down. So if this number is greater than 90, then it's too easy. So we've got, let's see, don't want to do that. We've got 18, let me bring this up here so you can see. We've got 18, it has a sum of 18 questions that we think are probably too easy. We've got, they may be too easy, we don't really know. We have 23 questions that are possibly too hard, and 30 that have a poor point by serial. Now what we can do is say poor plus too easy. So if it's a poor point by serial and it's too easy, then we know maybe it just would be an interesting question to look at. If that plus that equals 1, then, or you could just look for 2's. So either way. So it looks like oops, I wrote that equation wrong. Equals 2. There we go. I wondered how we came up with more. Okay. How many questions are poor plus too easy according to our random standard? 10. It says 10 of them. And it identifies those 10. What about poor plus too hard? Equals, so if that plus that equals 2, then it's difficult, it's poor question, and it's too hard. Okay, so that's identified 6. So there's some that are not too easy, too hard, and kind of poor. Some are too hard, some are too easy. Now, too hard doesn't mean it really should be too hard, too easy. Point by serial is factual. Too hard, we don't know if it's too hard or not. Too easy, we don't know if it's too easy or not. But again, these are questions to ask. So for this one, you know it's not going to be too hard. For this one, there's only 49% getting it correct. Is there something about the question that is too hard, or is it worded trickily? Or was it just not taught in the course? So those are really easy ways to kind of categorize things. And then you can color code according to your Excel document, but then you can then sort. So let's turn this filtering back on. You can then sort the data by multiple things. So you could say, show me which are poor and too hard, or you can just filter out all the zeros. And since it's sorted by ascending, you've got some that are good discriminators, but not very many got it correct. So these might be good discriminators. When you see a good discriminator and it's too hard, often it's because the question is kind of tricky. So that way, the good students who've really read all the material, who memorize things, they get it right. So you've still got the same pattern and the same trend of being able to discriminate high from low, but not very many got it right. It could also be that you have a batch of students that just did not study. So don't leave that out as an option too. But again, the stats don't tell us that. You have to look and talk to the teacher, find out what's going on, know your students. You can then do that. Which ones are maybe poor and too easy? If they're good discriminators and too easy, that's pretty good. If they're poor and too easy, it might just be way too easy across the board. You notice that most of these are high 90s. Either way, it could be, you also want to count up the total number of these. 18 out of 95, was it? You may want to establish a certain percentage of questions that have a certain type of difficulty index. So you may talk to the instructor. Did you know you have X percentage of questions that 90% or more are getting correct? Is that okay? Should we look at the questions? Do you want to make the test more difficult? Usually that's not a problem, but it's something to look at. And those are questions you want to be asking. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of orientation on how you can look at this data and what questions you might want to ask.